Hey everyone, welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan, along with my fabulous co host, Kathryn Peterson. And once again, we are bringing a new episode on Wednesday. This time, the day before Thanksgiving, an episode we've decided to call Gratitudes. And let's be honest, there's a lot to be thankful for in all of our lives. And Kathryn and I are going to spend a few minutes today looking at why gratitudes are an important part of the coaching process, why they are hopefully a really important part of your daily routines, and how to maybe look at them through a lens of more than just sitting around the table tomorrow with your family and saying what you're thankful for, how to really practice gratitudes as a discipline in your life that might pour into a lot of different areas of your life. So let's spend some time talking about gratitudes today. And before we dive deep, I always want to bring in my co-host Kathryn. Great to see you again today.
Good to see you too. I'm excited for this topic. I was thinking about it in the car last night, and I'll bring up my gratitude story from last night. So yeah, let's dive into it. It's a topic that we actually haven't covered yet, but it's one of the more popular topics out there. So it'll be, I think, good to throw our perspective into the mix.
Yeah, I think when topics are popular, there's a temptation to think, well, what are we going to add to that? There's so many great people out there talking on this topic. But the truth is, for our audience, which again we recognize are a lot of you listening are entrepreneurial people. You're running a small business or you're running a production team of some sort, maybe in the housing industry where Kathryn and I spend our times, maybe maybe you're working in a house today, like our previous guest, Courtney Wilson, who's probably organizing somebody's house today as she's listening to this. And we look at the reality that you're dealing with when we prepare these episodes, and we think, well, how can we bring a different angle to this, a different perspective that we share, so this doesn't just feel like, hey, this is what everybody talks about. Let's just repeat those things. And one of the things that occurred to me, Kathryn, is that as you and I are talking about gratitudes, the context that some of our audience is sitting in here, as we are winding down 2024, is about 2.5 going on 3 years of some of the most difficult housing industry confluence of circumstances that we've seen, at least in our professional lifetimes. How would you start us off on this? How do you prepare yourself for a attitude of gratitude when everything around you is really freaking hard?
I think so much of it is just practice, what we're used to saying out loud and the words that we're using. So, something as you were saying that, I thought, oh, yeah, I do say a lot. I'm really grateful for my past clients. Someone will say, hey, how's your business? It's been really crazy. And I'll say, yeah, I'm really grateful because I have this great group of past clients that I've worked with for a long time who call regardless of what the market temperature is. So I think it's some of it is the words that we say every day to other people and ourselves that kind of help us have that mindset of gratitude.
So the first takeaway is words matter, and what we say really does set a tone for what people hear. But let's
Mhm.
take that one into a second direction. My experience tells me people don't always remember what I say, but they will tend to remember how I made them feel. So
Yeah.
how do gratitudes play into that emotional part of that exchange? So not just saying how grateful and thankful I am, but how do you acknowledge the fact that your tone and the context in which you share these things is also part of the formula?
I think it's exactly that. Just knowing that my attitude will influence my whole team and getting it in the right space will impact productivity and their mental space for the day. So I think just knowing that how much we all impact each other is huge.
Yeah, I would say as I'm processing this, I think the way we say things really does matter. And so, you can throw out a hey, thanks a lot. And that's technically a gratitude on some verbal level, but the tone there isn't the same as, hey, Kathryn, seriously, like, thank you for doing that. I really appreciate what you did and how you helped us. And so I think maybe that would be the second bit of advice is not just, what you say, it's in the spirit of how you say it. It's maybe slow down a little bit and really be thoughtful about how you're expressing it. Because if you can do that, your success ratio of connecting that gratitude with someone you care about goes up exponentially. And if you don't, maybe you miss that opportunity. Yeah, technically you said thanks, but it's about the value of a text
Mhm.
message.
Absolutely. So I want to back up a little bit because I think it's important that we cover why it might be important to have gratitude and to have a gratitude practice in your day, because I think that's pretty fascinating information. So kind of give me a little bit of your why, and then I'll maybe bring up a few of the things of why I do it.
Yeah. Well, I think if I look at this through a lens of several things that I think are important as I prep my day, uh, the reason I would say this one is always on the list is if my attitude and my mindset are starting from a position of gratitude, I start to design my day early on toward the things I want to be grateful for by the end of the day. And intentionality then becomes a big part of the way the day flows. If I hope to be really grateful for these things, whether at work or at home at the end of the day, I'm going to need to invest some energy into making that outcome possible. So I think that's one of the first reactions I have to that question is, are you designing your day toward the things you want to be grateful for even before they've happened? It's amazing how your day flows differently when you intentionally design it toward the outcomes that you're truly aiming for.
Mhm. So on a macro level, if someone hasn't really practiced gratitude, so it's proven to improve mental health, improve happiness, improve productivity, which Michael touched on as well, physical health, reduced materialism, um, even less likely to suffer from burnout. So I think those are all things. If you aren't already doing this, it's a good time to add it in, because I think the benefits are far reaching and we don't even know what they all are right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you rattled off a list of those things because some of us may not be thinking about that or we may not be aware of that. And if you're not, I mean, if you haven't been listening to a lot of great, thinkers out there, brain scientists, I think of a podcast I listen to called Huberman Labs, and this guy's a Stanford professor who's got a lot of really deep thoughts and some science on, how our brains work and how we interact with information and process information and what's going on in the chemistry of our body as we do that. So a lot of those things you just rattled off are in harmony with other things we're doing. So when you combine things like gratitude with exercise, it's a multiplier effect. It's not a one for
Mhm.
one ratio. It's like a one times whatever energy you're putting into it. So I really find that when I am willing to think like you just listed off how all these benefits are available to me, I get a little more motivated to figure out, well, how do I design my day around connecting as many of those things as I can in the hopes that
Mhm.
the best version of me shows up and the best, I think it's probably also the best version of me finishes strong because it's not just, how do I start the day? I want to finish strong. I want to come home because most of us listening have someone at home who is the reason why we might be going out and doing all the hard work we're doing. Wouldn't we like to bring home the best version of ourselves at the end of the day?
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's important. And one thing I've heard about gratitude, this wasn't in my notes, but I just remembered is it's impossible to feel, I think it was like sad or angry at the same time that you're feeling gratitude. Those are just like the brain won't work that way. So I would have a kid who was feeling really down and just, I don't know, angry. I would say, great, list 50 things you're grateful for. Give them a pen and paper. And some of them were hilarious, by the way, because 50 is a lot, but it would, and sometimes like Abby she just wouldn't do 50. So I gave her 10. Um, but it did always adjust their outlook and their mood. So I think that there is definitely something, this is my own experiment I did at home, but I knew it was helpful for them and I knew it would turn around our day.
Kathryn Peterson, social psychologist.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think I've saved a couple of them, but I should make sure I I have access to those at some point, maybe send them to them when they're older.
All right, well, this is a good segue because this is, I think, another topic we can at least introduce. Some of us, based on previous episodes, are well aware of my CIA exercise. You know, the things that we control, the things that we influence, and the things we must accept because we simply don't get to control them. Gratitudes are no, they're not immune to that filter. Now, so we're talking about a lot of things we get to control, but there are some things that we also get to influence. So that example with your daughter is a really good one of where you're trying to influence positivity as it relates to the spirit of it, so that the exercise of writing down all these gratitudes might help, rewire and change some of the neurotransmitters firing toward things that maybe produce different outcomes for her. What are some other areas when you think about influence with gratitudes? Because again, we don't get to control someone else's attitude, but we sure as heck do get to influence it. What are some other thoughts you have in the professional context when you think about influencing gratitudes?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a practice where everyone in a meeting goes around and says something, someone else that they're grateful for on the team and why very specifically, they're grateful for them. Or it could be that Win by Noon has three things and sharing those with other people can be huge. You could gift a gratitude journal. So there's so many different ways to kind of influence that practice and bring that into your teams.
Yeah, I appreciate a couple of those examples, and I really do think it's important to recognize that that's one of the roles that we play as we're all humans being, and we get an opportunity every day to interact with people that may or may not have been as prepared as you were to be grateful. And you're dealing with Debbie Downer. You're dealing with Eeyore. You're dealing with someone who's just decided that day they're not having it and they're not going to be in a good mood. And not only are they struggling, some of these things might help reroute that path, but let's then go one level deeper because somebody in the audience is out there thinking, yeah, that sounds really nice. Give them a journal, see if you can work through it. But that's not everybody we deal with, Kathryn, in,
Right.
in our business, especially in housing, because there's a lot of stress. I mean, housing values are at all-time highs. The amount of money people are borrowing is at all-time highs. Interest rates, while not at all-time highs, it probably feels that way to a segment of our
Hmm.
audience. They may not have the context of some of the interest rates our parents saw, but to them, this feels stressful. So you've got all these components of stress going on. How are you interacting with people who, yeah, they're not taking the reroute. They're just gonna be frustrated. How do you express and experience gratitude even when everyone around you is determined to pour water on your fire?
I would say that that's up to me and that's my control. That's something I can control. So it can be, boy, am I grateful that conversation has now been had and we're done. Boy, am I happy that their closing is coming up in a week and it's not going to be a 5-month closing. I'm
The
really,
finish line is in sight.
yeah. Yeah. So I think it's controlling my own gratitude. And people have a really hard time being nasty with people who are in a good spot and very friendly. They just that's not what they wanted to engage with somebody. And I think it's pretty easy to back out and say, hey, I'm gonna be in my own place and they're not gonna influence my day. And I'm gonna be grateful. And eventually people sometimes come around to that and they will develop a whole different attitude while on the phone just because you're not going down with them.
Yeah, the phrase that comes to mind as I'm listening to you riff on that a little bit is, look, is someone out there going to think you're Pollyanna? Maybe. Maybe they've just decided, what's
Yep.
up with you and your sunshine? Like I just can't
Yep.
handle it. And when that happens, I think the message I'm telling myself is there are enough people who want to do
Mm,
business the way I want to do it that I don't need to worry about the few who don't.
yeah.
My job isn't to convert everybody to positivity. My hope is to influence everyone with my positivity. And so that's the spirit I've got to take with it. I always tell myself, assume positive intent. Now,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I tell myself that a little too late. We can all get hijacked by somebody, but I try to remember that maybe they're attitude is coming from something I don't totally understand. Maybe they're dealing with something that I don't totally understand. And it's possible that their anger or attitude is being directed at me, but maybe I'm not the source of the problem. Maybe I'm
Mhm.
just the person that's got to hear their complaint today. Um, and then the last thing I think, as we're touching on this one, is also I have to remember this when someone is in an emotional state, their amygdala is hijacked and they've decided to just be irritable, and they're probably not using rationality at that moment. While they may be throwing out words and phrases that, when you hear them, are connected to real things and real events, the process or the filter that they're using at that point is emotional. Therefore, it's very possible, if not likely, that that's a skewed view. So I tell myself, don't take the bait. Just because someone is determined to pour that water on my fire and turn this into a negative experience, one that they're not grateful for, and therefore I should somehow join them in this dour spirit. I don't have to take the bait. I can just breathe deeply, let them process, and acknowledge them without joining them. And so I just have to go into my day recognizing that when someone is going to confront that spirit of gratitude that I'm bringing, I don't have to take the bait. I can choose to avoid joining them on that journey. And I hope that's true for some of you out there today, because heck, you might be working with somebody who regularly is trying to get you to take the bait, or someone may live in your home, and that would be sad, but it happens, where you've just got somebody who's just in a bad way and they're not having it. I hope for all of you, you're not taking this topic today as, oh, just you know journal some things down in the morning and your day's going to be rosy. You have to be prepared to deal with people that might not join you on a journey of gratitude.
But I think if you practice gratitude enough, you can either A, recover, or B, approach that conversation differently than you would otherwise. So I think that that's where the practice that you do for yourself can make a difference in your day. Is it can make it easier to be like, hey, I'm really happy that I have clients. I'm glad that that person got me as a client because I can handle that and I can still get that loan closed and I can still move on and develop that relationship if I want to. So I think that it's the perspective that you take with that makes you mentally strong, and that I think is built through that practice of gratitude.
Great example. And as you say that, it just reminds me of what so many of our episodes seem to come back to, which is when you've put some thought ahead of time into this, and then you've designed a process or a routine, if we're looking at disciplines around this, you're better prepared for things that might not go according to plan. You've already thought through the contingencies and you're
Mm,
prepared. And so as I listen to you say that, I think that's really good. You're in a better position to be able to say, "That's okay. I can handle this. I've got it. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna we're gonna have some turbulence, but guess what? The plane is gonna land safely at your destination,"
mhm.
as we referenced a few episodes back. All right, so one other thing I want to throw in, and it's just for the sake that here we sit at really about 4 weeks to go in the year. If you're listening to this on post date, and if you're listening to that after that, maybe the clock's already been ticking a little bit. This is a great time of year if you're practicing gratitudes to go back and review your plans. You have talked about this a few times, Kathryn. Some of us in our focus plan made a commitment to outcomes we're going to achieve or disciplines that we're going to commit to. How have you been able to use the review of your plans in a way to also combine with your spirit of gratitude?
I think there's a few different ways to do it. I mean, I think acknowledging, let's say in a life plan where your relationship is with your kid currently, and saying, wow, I'm really grateful that last year we took this trip. And I'm really grateful that they talked to me about these issues. And that might help you better write the plan moving forward. But I also think part of your life plan might include, hey, there's a few people that I just need to reach out to and maybe write them a thank you note, or I maybe need to, tell them I'm grateful for them every month because they may not understand how I feel about them. So it could either be part of the the pieces of the life plan accounts, or it can be something you reflect on as you write that future vision for that relationship.
Okay, so for our audience, Kathryn just introduced something that's really beautiful, which is as she was giving some examples, she's referencing a tool that we call the life plan. And that may be familiar to many of you. And for some of you, you may be thinking, wait a minute, Michael, you said a focus plan. She started talking about a life plan. Are those the same thing? And we've got an episode on focus planning, so you certainly can go back and review that if you're interested in that. That's a tool in which we harmonize a lot of the things from both our personal and our professional life, in which we boil them down at a really macro level to the big and most important things we're trying to accomplish personally and professionally on a one sheet document. That's a focus plan, and we can again unpack that further. But the life plan is a much more detailed version of all the areas of life that are important to you. And Kathryn was just riffing on a few of them that are great. So maybe this is a good reminder to those of you listening. If you've written a life plan, what a great resource and time of year to go sit and review those life accounts so you can do exactly what Kathryn just suggested. Find those areas of your plan where progress was made in 2024 and reflect upon not just what happened, but how that happened. There may be some real learning in there that helps you recast plans for the year ahead so you can continue to make progress, whether it's in the account with your children, whether it's in the account with your finances, whether it's in the account with your hobbies. I mean, with your career, there's so many different areas that you might have written about in that life plan that allow you to go back, take an accounting of that account and be grateful for the progress that you've made, the circumstances that have progressed. And if there are some areas that don't feel like they've progressed, ask some simple questions. Is that because I didn't intentionally put the energy into this one? Or is that because what I did maybe didn't work as well as I had hoped it would? The strategy just wasn't in alignment with the opportunity. Give yourself some time to take that review and recast some of the plans that you'll make for 2025. I think it's a great time of year to do that. And final plug on it, if you've never written a life plan, buildingchampions.com, the homepage for our company website, has a free resource you can download. So go to the resources tab on the site and check it out. It's a great exercise for this time of year, if you've never written one, to really think deeply about where you are in all the areas of life that are important and where you might invest your time as you continue to live in the future in those accounts with intentionality, the desire to really get better in those areas, and the hope that, just like the title of our podcast, you're building a bigger life. So, Kathryn, thanks for referencing those.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's important to look at those every so often, then also figure out what are some things that I can do in this account. And so there's, gratitude really becomes a part of all the parts, all the accounts. So it's important that we're going through that today.
Great. Well, then let's bring this one into the home stretch. Any other thoughts related to the spirit and the exercise of
Mhm.
gratitude? Because we're all sitting on the doorstep of a 4-day holiday weekend here in the United States. We certainly have a lot to be thankful for, but gratitude is really a more proactive strategy that you can use every day. It's not just a holiday to pause and reflect. It's a daily discipline that you can embrace. So any closing thoughts for our audience as they think about
Yeah.
gratitudes?
So two things that I think I wanted to bring up is one, I've used this as a tool if I have a friend who's struggling. And I've done this with a few people where I know that they're having a hard time, and I'll just randomly send me three things you're grateful for, just to pop them out of that. And I'll do it every day, and I'll send it to them first sometimes. And that's actually later, a few friends have said, well, I was actually in a really bad spot, and that helped me, just knowing you were going to check in with me every single day and just say, hey, and got me out of my funk a little bit. Number two is you can find gratitude in everything. So my story I was going to tell you about last night was, if anyone's used to Colorado I-70 with an early winter storm, and I was driving up I-70 right at the tunnel, they closed the highway right ahead of me. And I really wanted to get home. I hadn't been at my house for a week and was just ready. And I thought, okay, well, this is a bummer. What are some things I'm grateful for? And I was very grateful that I had stopped and gotten gas and taken a bio break before that closure. I was really grateful that I wasn't on the other side of the tunnel where the accident had happened, and that how lucky I felt that I wasn't involved in that. And I had gotten my winter tires, and I was very grateful for my husband for setting up that appointment. So it was, and then honestly, the hour went by pretty quickly. I did some stuff in the car and sat there with all the other people as we waited for the highway to open up. And later they closed it for the night. So I was also very grateful that I got through. So I think it's sometimes taking
Mhm.
that moment to say, okay, this is a huge bummer, because I could have sat there very angry and I could not do anything about it. Couldn't go back, couldn't go forward. So it's recognizing those moments and saying, okay, what can I do in this moment to change my mindset?
That is a really great story, Catherine, because I think a lot of people, when they hear that, their minds, if they aren't proactively thinking about gratitudes, their minds go to things that are probably pretty negative about a lot of things that they don't control. And now they're just stuck. And that's frustrating. So, great example that you picked, because I think we could apply that to a lot of examples like it in our lives. So that's a great wrap on that. I'm going to finish by saying three things. I'm gonna go into my little win by noon journal moment here. The three things I'm really grateful for today is, number one, I want to shout out a thanks to Building Champions. As an organization, they've been really supportive of me and of us as we've launched this
Mhm.
podcast this year. Not only have they helped us get some great value from our audio engineer, so shout out to Scott Higby at Studio C. He's done a great job for us, and that's because Building Champions really believed that this was worth the investment of time and energy. Secondly, Catherine, I want to thank you, because this was an idea that you and I both shared with each other independently, and decided we could combine it and create something that was a little different than each of us were thinking, but that created something that might make what we've been able to do with Building Bigger Lives unique. And this has been a really fun year of producing these
Mhm.
episodes with you. So secondly, I'm grateful for you. And third, to our audience who chooses to tune in and download episodes, not just on a weekly basis to listen, but to share them with others, to comment, to give us encouraging feedback when we run into you in person or we see you at an event. It means a lot to us that you all have joined us on this journey, because we know you have a lot of podcasts to choose from out there. We live in a world where this is a thing and people do this, and I know that time is precious. We want to make sure the content we bring is valuable to an entrepreneurial audience like you, and we're thankful for you. I'm certainly thankful. And so I just want to make sure I tip on those three things before we head into a holiday weekend.
Oh, that was great to hear. And I'm glad that you brought up both Building Champions and our audience, because that is huge. I also want to do a quick shout out to our guests. I think Michael has created a lot of great relationships in the industry, and I've kind of been able to piggyback off a lot of those. And I'm pretty grateful to the relationships that we've built and been able to bring people on as guests to kind of pass on their perspective into the industry. One of our goals with this was to have people who weren't typically heard get their voice out. And I think that we've been able to do that. And I hope to do that more. And thank you so much for all your great perspectives this year. And thanks again for being with us. I think probably with that, we can close this puppy out. And first, happy Thanksgiving. I hope that you find something that you're grateful for with your family over this weekend, and find a few things that you can be grateful for and spread the gratefulness on to other people. Tell a few people that you're grateful for them over the next few days as your assignment, and then share that information. Let us know how that went. Also, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and we really, really appreciate you being with us today. And with that, we'll get this closed out. Thanks again, Michael.
Happy Thanksgiving, Catherine.
Thank you.